Have you ever wondered what medieval Europe actually smelled like? What it truly felt like, beyond the stories of filth and plague we've all been told? Our minds often paint a picture of relentless grime, but history is often a place of unexpected truths. It's always so wonderful to think about where everyone is tuning in from as we begin these journeys together. I wonder, what time is it where you are, and what does the world outside your window look like right now? I hope you can find a comfortable spot, perhaps settle in a little deeper, and let tonight's story gently carry you back in time. Welcome to Sleeping Scribe, where calming history stories help you unwind and gently fall asleep. Tonight, we journey to the Middle Ages, not to explore its castles or battlefields, but to uncover the surprising truth about daily life, starting with the greatest myth of them all. The story we are often told about the Middle Ages is a simple one. It is a story of darkness, ignorance, and above all, filth. We picture people with matted hair and soot-stained faces, living lives where a bath was a rare, perhaps even feared, event. But this image, so vivid in our collective imagination, is largely an invention. It is a phantom, conjured not from the medieval world itself, but from the minds of later generations who wished to see their own reflection shine brighter against a darker past. This misconception began its life in the quiet of a scholar's study. The term Dark Ages was first spoken by an Italian scholar named Francesco Petrarca in the 1330s. He was a poet and a humanist, a man deeply in love with the classical elegance of ancient Rome. When he looked at the centuries that followed its fall, he was not recoiling from a lack of soap, but from what he saw as a decay in the quality of Latin literature. His criticism was about grammar and prose, not grooming. Yet the name stuck, a powerful and misleading label that would color our perceptions for centuries to come. As the quiet turning of a manuscript page in a scriptorium gave way to the clamor of the Renaissance, this idea began to grow. Intellectuals of this new, vibrant era looked back at the immediate past and saw a world they wanted to leave behind. To celebrate their own age of rebirth and artistic genius, they painted the preceding one in the darkest shades possible. They were artists, creating a contrast, a dark background, to make their own light appear more brilliant. And so, the idea of a dirty, unenlightened medieval world became a convenient and powerful narrative. It was a story of progress, with themselves as the triumphant heroes. But the myth truly solidified much later, during the Victorian era of the 19th century. They built grand sewer systems, engineered massive public works, and waged a passionate war against dirt and disease. Looking back from their world of iron pipes and industrial progress, the simpler medieval world seemed impossibly primitive, almost disgustingly so. They viewed the past through a lens of their own anxieties and triumphs, popularizing the enduring image of the filthy medieval peasant. They wrote the histories, and their sense of disgust became our historical fact. Yet, if we listen closely, the medieval world itself tells a very different story. They find evidence of flowing water used for washing and sanitation, a quiet testament to a world far more advanced than the myth allows. The stones themselves speak of a concern for cleanliness, a desire to manage waste and maintain order that the later stories simply ignored. These systems were complex, a marriage of engineering and a deep-seated belief in the importance of a clean environment for a healthy spiritual life. And this value was not confined to the cloister. If you were invited to a meal in a medieval home, even a modest one, a ritual would unfold. A gleaming metal basin of water would be brought out, light catching on its polished surface. You would be expected to wash your hands both before and after the meal. This was not a forgotten nicety. It was a standard of etiquette mentioned frequently in texts from the period. The feeling of a rough, clean linen towel for drying your hands was a common and expected part of sharing a meal. It was a gesture of respect for your host, for the food, and for yourself. The very language they used reveals this disconnect. When a medieval writer used the Latin word sordidus, which we might translate as filthy, they were often making a moral judgment, not a physical one. It spoke of a corrupted soul, not an unwashed body. In fact, personal cleanliness was deeply intertwined with spirituality. To be clean on the outside was seen as a reflection of inner purity, a sign of a soul in good standing with God. A monk, carefully writing about theology in a quiet scriptorium, might also write about the importance of washing, seeing no contradiction between the two. One was simply an earthly expression of the other. This desire for cleanliness fueled a thriving economy. Records from the time tell a tale not of filth, but of commerce. Merchants traded in fragrant soaps, crafted from animal fats and wood ash, sometimes scented with herbs and flowers. There was a market for perfumes, for scented oils and powders to soften the skin and sweeten the air. Grooming tools, like combs carved from bone and tweezers made of bronze, were common possessions. People cared about their appearance, and they had a bustling market ready to supply their needs. The great irony is that the true decline in European bathing culture happened much later. It was not in the Middle Ages, but around the 16th century, that public bathing began to fall out of favor. New and terrifying diseases, like syphilis, began to spread, and a fearful public started to associate the warm, shared waters of the bathhouse with contagion. At the same time, the Reformation brought a new wave of moral austerity, and many public baths were closed down. It was then, not before, that the habit of regular, full body washing began to wane. For the medieval knight or noble, appearance was everything. It was a direct reflection of their status, power, and worth. To appear in court with unkempt hair or dirty clothes would have been a source of deep shame, a stain on their honor. Grooming was an essential ritual, a part of the daily performance of being a person of high birth. Their concern with cleanliness was not just about comfort, it was about maintaining their very identity in a highly stratified world. Now that we've cleared the air of these modern myths, let's step into the world as it truly was. Let us visit the one place that was the undeniable heart of medieval hygiene, a place of steam, community, and surprising complexity. Let's go to the public bathhouse. In the heart of the medieval town, amidst the narrow, winding streets and timber-framed houses, stood an institution as vital as the church or the marketplace. It was the public bathhouse, known colloquially as the stews. The name itself hints at its nature, derived from the old French word estive, which meant a sweat bath or a heated room. It was a place for stewing, for letting the warm steam open the pores and cleanse the body. And these were not rare luxuries. Most towns of any reasonable size had at least one, and often more. The great city of Paris, for example, had over 32 public bathhouses operating in the 13th century, a staggering number that speaks to their popularity and importance. Imagine walking through these bustling streets, above the noise of merchants hawking their wares and children playing in the alleys. You might hear the sharp, clear ring of a bell. This is followed by a loud, clear voice echoing off the plaster walls. It is the town crier, an employee of the bathhouse, and he is making his daily announcement. "The water is hot," he calls out. "The baths are ready." This was how they advertised. It was a public service announcement, a daily invitation to the entire community to come and wash away the grime and cares of the day. As you follow the sound, you would soon see it, a plume of steam billowing out of an open doorway into the cooler street air. This was the sign you had arrived. The building itself might be unassuming from the outside, but the entrance was a portal into another world. The moment you stepped across the threshold, the feeling of warm, humid air would greet you, a stark contrast to the outside world. The smell would be one of damp wood from the great tubs and the heated stone of the floors and walls. It was a clean, earthy scent, the signature perfume of the stews. These establishments were not chaotic, unregulated free-for-alls. They were often carefully managed and regulated by the town councils themselves. These civic bodies would set the prices, ensuring that a bath remained affordable for most citizens. They would dictate the opening hours and establish rules of conduct. There was often a tiered pricing system. A simple steam bath might cost very little, while a full bath in a large wooden tub of hot water would cost more. This meant that people from various walks of life, from humble artisans to wealthy merchants, could all partake in the ritual of bathing. Interestingly, many of these bathhouses were owned or licensed by the local church or monastery. Far from condemning bathing, the church often saw it as a way to promote public health and well-being. A clean populace was a healthy populace. The church's involvement lent these places a sense of legitimacy and order. They were seen as a necessary and positive part of the fabric of civic life, an institution that contributed to the common good. Upon entering, after paying your fee to the bathhouse keeper, you would be given a pair of wooden clogs. The floors were often made of stone or tile, slick with water, and very hot from the fires burning below. So these patens were essential to protect your feet. The keeper of the stews was a recognized and respected professional. They managed the staff, oversaw the heating of the water, and ensured the establishment ran smoothly. It was a position of responsibility, requiring a shrewd head for business and a talent for managing people. Though rules varied from town to town, men and women often bathed on separate days, or in facilities that were divided to ensure privacy. However, mixed bathing was not unheard of, particularly in certain times and places. The bathhouse was a flexible institution, adapting to the local customs and mores of the community it served. These were not new inventions, born of a sudden medieval desire for cleanliness. They were a direct continuation of the rich bathing culture of the Roman Empire. In many parts of Europe, the tradition had never fully died out. The medieval stews were simply the next chapter in a very old story of humanity's love for the cleansing and restorative power of hot water. From inside, you would hear the sounds of the bathhouse before you saw it fully. The echoing splash of water, the low murmur of dozens of conversations, the occasional burst of laughter. It was the sound of a community at ease, a lively and wondrous sound that filled the steamy air. It was clear from the moment you arrived that this was a place for so much more than just washing. But these places were far more than just a place to get clean. Once inside, an entire world of social and economic activity unfolded. The bathhouse was the medieval equivalent of a community center, a cafe, a spa, and a boardroom, all rolled into one steamy, vibrant package. It was a place where the lines between public and private, leisure and work, blurred into a comfortable, communal haze. Imagine two merchants, their bodies submerged in the warm water of a large wooden tub. As the steam swirls around them, they lean back against the smooth, water-worn benches and begin to negotiate. They might discuss the price of wool, the terms of a loan, or the details of a new shipping venture. The relaxing, informal atmosphere was considered conducive to good business. It stripped away some of the formality of the outside world, allowing for more open and honest negotiation. Many important deals were struck right here, amidst the splashing and chatter. As you soaked, you would likely get thirsty or hungry. This was no problem. Bath attendants moved through the steam-carrying wooden trays laden with food and drink. The clinking sound of mugs of ale being served was a constant, comforting background noise. Spiced wine, warmed to chase away any chill, was a popular choice. Patrons might also order simple food, like baked bread or pies, enjoying a meal as they bathed. The smell of these fresh-baked goods would mingle with the ever-present sense of steam and damp wood, creating a uniquely inviting aroma. And what is a social gathering without entertainment? Musicians were often hired to add to the convivial atmosphere. In a corner of the large bathing hall, a musician might sit, gently strumming a lute. The gentle, melodic tune would drift through the room, a soothing soundtrack to the conversations and laughter. This was not a place of quiet contemplation, but of lively, joyful human connection. It was a place to relax the body and delight the senses. This vibrant social scene naturally made the bathhouse a popular spot for courtship. Young men and women could meet and socialize in a setting that was both public and surprisingly intimate. It offered a chance to talk and get to know one another, away from the more watchful eyes of the family home. Sharing a bath was seen as a perfectly respectable part of a courtship ritual, a sign of growing affection and familiarity. Life's great milestones were also celebrated here. A bride-to-be might spend the day before her wedding at the stews with her friends and female relatives. It was a ritual of purification and celebration, a day of being pampered and prepared for the next chapter of her life. They would laugh and talk, sharing stories and advice in the warm, supportive environment of the bath. It was a cherished tradition, weaving the bathhouse into the most important moments of a person's life. For those who wanted a more thorough cleaning, bath attendants were available for hire. These were skilled workers who could provide a range of services. They would scrub your back with a rough cloth, wash your hair with lye-based soap, and even provide a vigorous massage to soothe aching muscles. This was a place of service and pampering, where one could leave the hard work of getting clean to a professional. In an age before newspapers or instant communication, the bathhouse was a primary hub for the exchange of information. It was here that you could catch up on all the local gossip, learn about political developments, or hear news from travelers who had just arrived in town. As people relaxed, their tongues loosened, and information flowed as freely as the water. The stews were the living, breathing social network of the medieval town. To understand the mood of the city, one had only to listen to the conversations in the bathhouse. The social aspect was so central to the experience that being barred from the stews was a recognized form of social punishment. To be cast out from this communal hub was to be cut off from the heart of the town, a public shaming that would be deeply felt. For those seeking more privacy, some establishments had adjacent private rooms that could be rented by the hour. But for most, the appeal was the shared experience. The sight of friends laughing together in a large communal tub, their individual worries dissolving into the collective warmth of the water and the community. While friends gossiped and merchants made deals, another, more serious profession also found its home amidst the steam and chatter. In a designated corner of the bustling bathhouse, a different kind of service was being offered, one that blended hygiene with medicine in a way that seems strange to us today, but was perfectly logical to the medieval mind. This was the domain of the barber-surgeon. In the medieval world, medicine was divided. There were the university-trained physicians, learned men who studied ancient texts, diagnosed illnesses, and prescribed treatments, but who rarely got their hands dirty. Then there were the barber-surgeons. They were the skilled craftsmen of the medical world, the ones who performed the hands-on procedures, and the warm, clean environment of the bathhouse was considered the ideal place for their work. Imagine their corner of the stews. The air here has a different scent. The sharp, metallic smell of medical instruments mixes with the earthy aroma of herbal poultices and salves. You might see red and white striped towels hanging to dry, a visual cue known throughout the town. This iconic symbol of the barber's trade, which survives to this day, originally symbolized the two main aspects of their work: red for blood and white for the bandages used to stop it. One of the most common procedures performed here was bloodletting. This was based on the widely accepted medical theory of the four humors, the belief that the body was governed by four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness was thought to be caused by an imbalance of these humors. By carefully letting a small amount of blood, the barber-surgeon aimed to restore this delicate balance and bring the body back to health. A patron might sit on a stool while the practitioner made a small, clean incision, the entire procedure carried out with a methodical calm. Another popular therapy was cupping. Heated glass cups would be placed on the skin. As the air inside the cup cooled, it created a vacuum, pulling the skin upwards. This was believed to draw out impurities and relieve pain. The barber-surgeon might also be called upon for the dreaded but necessary task of tooth extraction. Using strong iron pliers, they would skillfully remove a painful, abscessed tooth, providing immediate relief from agonizing pain. Their corner was a place of both routine maintenance and urgent care. They also functioned as emergency medics for the town, performing minor surgeries like lancing painful boils or setting simple fractures. The public nature of their work meant that their reputation was always on the line. A clumsy or careless practitioner would quickly lose customers. This encouraged a certain standard of care and attention to hygiene, at least by the standards of the time. The low, reassuring murmur of a barber-surgeon explaining a procedure to a nervous patient would have been a common sound. Of course, they also performed the services we more commonly associate with barbers today. As part of the bathing experience, a man could receive a clean shave and a haircut. You might see one, his face lathered with soap, leaning back as the barber makes precise, focused movements, carefully scraping his beard away with a sharp, straight razor. It was all part of the same holistic approach to health and appearance. Beyond their surgical work, these practitioners were also apothecaries of a sort. They sold ointments, salves, and all manner of herbal remedies. The sound of a mortar and pestle grinding herbs for a remedy was another layer in the soundscape of the bathhouse. Whether you needed a cure for a cough, a poultice for a wound, or simply a close shave, the barber-surgeon's corner was the place to go. The bathhouse truly was the center of the common person's world of health and hygiene. It was a place where social life, business, and medicine all converged in a cloud of steam. But what about the wealthy and powerful? What did hygiene look like for those who did not need to share their bathwater with the rest of the town? To understand their world, we must leave the bustling town behind and enter the private stone walls of a castle. It's fascinating how public and social cleanliness was, isn't it? Can you imagine conducting a business meeting or catching up on news in a place like that? As we transition to the more private world of the nobility, we leave behind the echoing communal clamor of the public stews, our journey taking us from the heart of the town to the cold, imposing stone of the castle walls. Here, within the private world of the nobility, the pursuit of cleanliness transformed. It became a quieter ritual, more personal, more luxurious. The pace of life slows as we step across the threshold of a private bedchamber, a room dominated by a heavy tapestry and a grand curtained bed. Here, we will witness the intimate and elaborate art of the noble bath. There were no dedicated bathrooms here, no rooms of porcelain and tile. Instead, the bath came to the bather. The ritual began not with the turn of a tap, but with a quiet order and the scuffing of determined footsteps on stone floors. This was a performance, and the servants were the unseen stagehands. From the great kitchens, often located a significant distance away, they began their arduous task. They would haul bucket after heavy wooden bucket, each one filled with steaming water heated over the roaring kitchen fire. Their journey would take them up winding stone staircases and down long, drafty corridors, the weight of the water straining their arms with every step. The centerpiece of the ritual was the tub itself. It was a simple object, often a large wooden barrel cut in half, or a tub constructed by a cooper like a fine piece of furniture. It would be placed in the center of the bedchamber, or perhaps in a private sunlit room known as a solar. To make the experience more comfortable, the inside of the rough wooden tub was sometimes lined with a large soft linen cloth, creating a gentle barrier between the skin and the wood. You can imagine the sound, a gentle sloshing as each bucket of hot water is carefully poured in, the rising steam slowly beginning to fog the small panes of a nearby glass window. To complete the scene, a small tent or a canopy of fabric was often erected around the tub. This simple enclosure served a dual purpose. It trapped the precious, rising steam, creating a personal steam room that helped to open the pores and enhance the cleansing process. It also served to ward off the persistent drafts that swirled through even the most well-appointed castle chambers, ensuring the bather remained cocooned in a bubble of comforting warmth. The air within this small space would grow thick and humid, carrying the faint, pleasant smell of the wood fire from the kitchen that still clung to the heated water. This entire process, the sheer amount of labor involved, transformed the act of bathing from a simple chore into a significant luxury. This was not a casual daily event for most. It was a planned occasion, an indulgence to be savored. A lord, weary from a long journey on horseback, might order a bath to soak away the aches and the dust of the road. A lady might request one to prepare for an important feast or a courtly celebration. The warm water, a vital part of her ritual of beautification. They would often spend a long time soaking the world outside the steam-filled canopy, fading away into a quiet murmur. The intimate nature of the setting also allowed for a different kind of social interaction than the public stews. It was not uncommon for a husband and wife to share a bath. Within the privacy of their own chamber, surrounded by the gentle steam, it was a moment of quiet connection, a shared experience, away from the prying eyes of the court and the constant demands of their household. It was an act of both practicality and intimacy, a gentle pause in the highly structured life of the nobility. Once the bather was finished, the work for the servants began anew. The now tepid water had to be bailed out, bucket by bucket, and carried all the way back out again. The tub would be dried and stored, the linen lining wrung out, and the chamber returned to its normal state. The fleeting luxury of the bath was a testament to the immense amount of human effort required to create such a simple comfort in a world without plumbing. For the wealthiest and most powerful, this comfort was non-negotiable. Royalty, like King John of England in the early 13th century, were known to be so attached to their bathing rituals that they traveled with their personal bathtubs, which would be carried along with all the other royal baggage. In the household inventories of the nobility, these simple wooden tubs are frequently listed as prized possessions, a clear symbol of the wealth and status required to command such a luxurious and labor-intensive ritual. But the water itself was just the beginning. For the nobility, a bath was an opportunity to engage the senses, to transform the simple act of washing into a fragrant and soothing experience. It was a form of personalized alchemy, where the tub became a vessel for all manner of aromatic and healing infusions. The process often started in the castle's own herb garden. Servants would gather fresh cuttings of chamomile, with its gentle, apple-like scent, or invigorating mint and woody, cleansing rosemary. These herbs were not thrown into the water haphazardly. They were carefully bundled into small bags made of cheesecloth or muslin. These sachets were then boiled in a pot, creating a strong, fragrant infusion. This herbal liquid was then poured into the bath, or the bags themselves were allowed to steep in the hot water, slowly releasing their aromatic and medicinal properties. You can imagine the sight of one of these small bags gently floating in the steaming tub, the water around it slowly turning a deep, translucent green as the mint and chamomile work their magic. Flowers were another essential ingredient. They were prized for their delicate beauty and their intoxicating scents. Rose petals and lavender buds were particular favorites. They would be scattered across the surface of the water, creating a floating tapestry of color and fragrance. The simple act of sinking into the warm water would release their scent, enveloping the bather in a cloud of floral perfume. Rosewater, the distilled essence of countless petals, was a highly valued cosmetic in its own right, used to soften and perfume the skin long after the bath was over. For a more soothing and skin-softening experience, a handful of oatmeal could be placed in a cloth, which was then used to gently scrub the body. As the warm water saturated the oats, they would release a soothing, milky substance, believed to calm irritated skin and leave it feeling supple and soft. As the bath progressed, the water would become a complex and fragrant potion, a testament to the care and attention that went into its preparation. The sound was one of utter tranquility, just the gentle lapping of the infused water against the sides of the wooden tub. While these natural additives performed much of the work of cleaning and scenting, soap was also available, though it was very much a luxury item. The finest, most coveted soaps were imported. From Spain came the famous Castile soap, a hard, white soap made from olive oil. And from the Levant, traders brought Aleppo soap, a rich, green bar made with olive and laurel oil. These were expensive and their use was a sign of considerable wealth. For most, soap was made locally. It was a simple but effective concoction of tallow, which is rendered animal fat, and lye, a caustic substance derived from wood ash. This basic soap was often scented with local herbs to make it more pleasant. You can imagine the feeling of this soap, smooth and slightly oily on the skin, a very different sensation from the light, airy soaps we know today. These additions were not merely for pleasure. They were deeply rooted in the medieval understanding of medicine. It was believed that the heat of the bath opened the pores, making the body more receptive to the healing properties of the herbs. Each plant was thought to have specific effects, helping to rebalance the body's humors and ward off illness. Chamomile was for calming, rosemary for memory, mint for invigorating the spirit. A skilled herbalist could create different combinations tailored to specific ailments or desired effects, turning the bath into a personalized therapeutic treatment. For the ultimate display of luxury, a wealthy individual might even add spiced wine to their bathwater. The wine's scent would perfume the steam, and it was believed that its properties could be absorbed through the skin, promoting good health and vigor. To help apply all of these fragrant concoctions, a bather would use a natural sea sponge. This was another valuable import, brought all the way from the warm waters of the Mediterranean. Soft and porous, it was the perfect tool for working the tallow soap into a lather and for gently washing the skin with the scented herbal water. After the bath, true cleanliness was maintained not by daily washing, but by something worn right next to the skin. This was an innovation in personal hygiene that was perhaps just as important, if not more so, than the bath itself. It was the simple, elegant, and revolutionary secret of the shirt. The most crucial element of personal hygiene in the medieval world was not water, but fabric. Specifically, it was the linen undergarment worn directly against the skin. For a woman, this was a long shift or chemise, and for a man, a shirt. Everyone who could possibly afford it, from a modest town dweller to the king himself, wore one. This garment was the unsung hero of medieval cleanliness, a clever and surprisingly effective system for maintaining personal freshness. The magic was in the material itself. Linen, which is made from the fibers of the flax plant, has remarkable properties. It is highly absorbent, far more so than wool, and it is breathable, allowing air to circulate. Throughout the day, this linen layer would diligently do its work, wicking sweat, oils, and dirt away from the body. It acted as a barrier, protecting the far more expensive and difficult to clean outer garments from coming into contact with the skin. A person's fine woolen tunic or silk gown might be worn for days or weeks on end, but the linen beneath it was the real key to their personal hygiene. Outer garments were incredibly valuable. They were made of costly materials, often dyed with expensive pigments, and hand-stitched with immense care. Washing these items was a harsh process that could damage the delicate fibers and fade the rich colors. Consequently, they were rarely, if ever, fully washed. Instead, they were brushed, aired out, and spot-cleaned. The real laundry, the constant weekly cycle of washing, was reserved for the linen. The wealthy would own many sets of these undergarments and would change them daily, or in the case of royalty, perhaps even multiple times a day. A person's state of cleanliness was not judged by whether they smelled of soap, but by the visible evidence of their linen. A sliver of brilliant white cuff peeking out from beneath a dark woolen sleeve, or a crisp, clean collar visible at the neckline of a gown, was the ultimate sign of good hygiene and high status. It was a subtle but clear signal that you were wealthy enough to own multiple sets of linen and to pay for the labor required to keep them impeccably clean. The process of laundering this linen was arduous work, performed almost exclusively by women. The laundress would take the soiled shirts to a riverbank or a dedicated washing area. There, she would begin the process of turning the dull, sweat-stained fabric back to a brilliant white. The primary cleaning agent was lye, a strong alkali made by leaching water through wood ash. The linen would be soaked in a hot lye solution in a process called bucking, which helped to break down the dirt and oils. After soaking, the real physical labor began. The laundress would beat the heavy, wet fabric against a smooth, flat riverstone. The rhythmic sound of the laundry being struck against the rock would have been a familiar sound in any medieval town or castle. This physical agitation helped to force the dirt out of the fibers. Finally, the linen was rinsed thoroughly in the clean, flowing water of the river and laid out on grassy banks or draped over bushes to dry in the sun. The sunlight was a crucial part of the process, acting as a powerful natural bleaching agent, turning the linen a dazzling, pure white. You can imagine the crisp, clean smell of this sun-dried linen, one of the most pleasant and reassuring scents of the medieval world. Once clean and dry, the linens were carefully folded and stored. To keep them smelling fresh, scented sachets filled with dried lavender, rose petals, or other fragrant herbs would be placed among the stacks of shirts and chemises. When a noble lord or lady dressed in the morning, the first thing they would put on was this fresh, clean undergarment. The feel of the slightly rough, hand-spun linen against their skin, and the faint rustling sound it made, was the very foundation of their daily ritual. This system meant that a person could be personally very clean, their skin free from the grime of the previous day, even if their expensive outer clothes were not. The quantity and, just as importantly, the dazzling whiteness of one's linen was one of the most significant and visible indicators of wealth and status in the entire medieval world. With the body cleansed by the occasional bath and kept fresh daily by clean linen, the final touches of the noble grooming routine focused on the details, an intricate and meticulous culture of personal care centered on the hair, the face, and the hands, using a surprising variety of tools and preparations. Hair, in particular, received a great deal of attention. The comb was an essential and ubiquitous grooming tool, carried by people of all classes. For the wealthy, these were not simple plastic items, but finely crafted objects made from polished bone, dark wood, or even precious, imported ivory. You can just imagine the sight of an intricately carved ivory comb being drawn slowly and carefully through a lady's long hair. Combs were used not only for styling, but also for the practical and constant battle against lice and fleas, a universal problem of the age. Hair was washed, though perhaps not as frequently as we do today. Simple lye-based soaps were used, the same kind used for the body, followed by herbal rinses to add scent and softness. For noble women, blonde hair was often the height of fashion. To achieve this desirable look, or to enhance their natural color, they would use special rinses made from ingredients like saffron, chamomile flowers, or onion skins, and then sit in the sun to allow the light to naturally lighten their tresses. A noble woman's hair was rarely worn loose in public. It was a sign of her status to have it styled in elaborate braids and intricate updos, a task often performed with great skill by her ladies-in-waiting. Oral hygiene was also a concern. Lacking toothbrushes and modern toothpaste, people relied on simpler, yet effective, methods. The most common practice was to rub the teeth and gums vigorously with a piece of rough linen cloth. This abrasive action helped to scrub away food particles and plaque. To aid this process, people used tooth powders. These were made from a variety of ingredients, often ground together with a mortar and pestle. Sage, salt, and crushed rosemary were popular choices for their cleansing and abrasive properties. For a whitening effect, some even used powdered charcoal to combat bad breath. A common complaint in any era, people would chew on herbs like parsley or mint. They also created herbal mouthwashes by steeping mint, cloves, or marjoram in wine or water. They could create a fragrant and antiseptic rinse. The sharp, clean scent of a mint and clove mouthwash would have been a welcome sensation, a final touch to the morning grooming routine. Archaeologists have unearthed fascinating evidence of just how detailed this personal grooming was. Small, personal grooming kits, often made of bronze or silver, have been found in excavations. These kits, sometimes hung from a belt on a delicate chain, contained a variety of specialized tools. They often included a pair of small tweezers for plucking stray hairs, a pointed pick for cleaning underneath fingernails, and a curious little item known as an ear scoop, a tiny spoon-like implement for the delicate task of removing earwax. You can imagine the small, cool weight of a bronze ear scoop held in the palm of a hand, a testament to a world that was deeply concerned with the minutiae of personal cleanliness. The state of one's hands was particularly important. Clean, well-kept hands with neatly trimmed nails were a clear and immediate sign that one did not perform manual labor. They were a marker of leisure and nobility. Men of the noble class were also expected to be well. While beards were common, they were typically kept meticulously trimmed and oiled. Many men preferred to be clean-shaven, a service that was often performed by a personal barber or even by a skilled valet. The quiet, scraping sound of a sharp razor against skin would have been a familiar part of the morning ritual in any great household. These personal rituals, from the great production of a scented bath to the small, precise act of cleaning one's nails, reveal a world that was far from the myth of filth and grime. It was a world that valued a polished appearance, obsessed with detail, and dedicated to a refined and elegant vision of purity. But how did these individual habits fit into a larger societal understanding of health and sickness? We now broaden our view from the individual to the entire community. It's quite remarkable how much effort went into these personal routines, isn't it? From herbal baths to fine linen, it was a quiet sort of luxury. Which of these gentle rituals sounds the most relaxing to you? Let your mind drift on that thought as we explore how these ideas of purity shaped entire cities. Our journey now takes a final, gentle turn. We move away from the specifics of the personal routine, from the bath and the shirt, and begin to drift into the wider world of thought and belief that underpinned it all. We'll explore not just what medieval people did to stay clean, but why they did it. To truly understand their world, we must first understand the invisible landscape they inhabited. A world shaped not by germs and viruses, but by a far more ancient and mysterious fear, the fear of bad air. This entire worldview was built upon a single, powerful idea known as the miasma theory. It was a concept that had its roots in the ancient world, first articulated by the great physicians of Greece like Hippocrates and Galen. and it remained the dominant medical theory in Europe for well over 2,000 years, fading only in the late 19th century. It was a grand, unifying theory of everything, an elegant explanation for the terrifying randomness of sickness and death. It proposed that diseases, especially the great epidemics that swept through the population, were not passed from person to person, but were instead caused by inhaling miasmata, a poisonous, foul vapor that rose from filth and decay. Within this framework, the sense of smell became the most important diagnostic tool a person had. It was your first and most vital line of defense. A bad smell was not merely unpleasant. It was a literal warning sign of mortal danger. The stench of rotting garbage, of stagnant water, or of human waste was, to the medieval mind, the smell of disease itself. You could imagine them picturing it as a shimmering, foul vapor rising from a swamp at dusk, a visible and malevolent cloud of corruption drifting on the evening air. To inhale that scent was to risk inhaling the very essence of the plague. This is why medieval people were so profoundly concerned with the world of sense, in a way that is hard for us to fully grasp. Their world was a constant negotiation between good and bad air, a battle between life-giving fragrance and death-dealing stench. When you walked down a busy street, you might hold a perfumed handkerchief to your nose, not as an act of delicate sensibility, but as a practical act of self-preservation. When a church burned the heavy, sweet-smelling incense that filled its vaulted ceilings, it was not only a tribute to God, but a conscious effort to purify the air, to drive out the invisible miasmas that might be lingering there. What is so fascinating about this theory is that it was not entirely wrong. It was a conclusion based on careful, if incomplete, observation. Medieval people correctly noticed that disease was more common in crowded, dirty places where the smells were worst. Things that generate miasma, like sewage and rotting organic matter, are indeed often the very same things that breed the germs we now know to be the true culprits. So their remedies, aimed at eliminating bad smells, sometimes worked beautifully, but for entirely the wrong reasons. Cleaning the streets did reduce disease, not because it removed the smell, but because it removed the bacteria the smell came from. Physicians of the time developed complex ideas about these vapors, believing that different types of miasma could cause different diseases. The plague, in their minds, was the result of a particularly potent and deadly miasma, a uniquely corrupt form of air. They looked for its origins everywhere, even in the heavens, believing that strange astronomical events, like the alignment of planets, could generate a wave of miasmatic air that would then descend upon the earth. The most dangerous places were always those associated with decay, fetid swamps, crowded graveyards, and the butcher's quarter of a city were all considered hotbeds of miasma. Even the subtle, earthy smell of damp soil after a heavy rain could be viewed with suspicion. A potentially dangerous vapor rising from the ground. The theory provided a perfect explanation for why epidemics could devastate an entire district or town all at once. Everyone, rich and poor alike, was breathing the same poisoned air. And so, every public health effort, every sanitation law, was guided by one simple, overarching goal: to fight the bad smells, and in doing so, to rob disease of its very breath. Guided by this powerful and deeply held belief in the danger of bad air, medieval towns and cities developed surprisingly complex systems to keep their shared environments clean, and by extension, to keep their citizens safe. Contrary to the myth of streets flowing with filth, urban life was often a picture of organized, methodical effort, a constant and communal struggle to create a fortress of cleanliness against the invisible enemy of miasma. Many towns enacted what we would now call sanitary laws, civic regulations designed to control waste and promote a healthier environment. It was often made illegal for a citizen to simply dump their household waste or sewage into the street or the local river. Instead, official refuse pits were designated on the outskirts of the city, safely outside the defensive walls, where the decaying matter could be contained. The enforcement of these laws shows a clear understanding that the cleanliness of the town was a shared responsibility, a matter of public, not just private, concern. To manage human waste, public latrines, sometimes called gongs, were often constructed. These were typically built over flowing rivers, which would carry the waste away, or over deep pits that could be periodically emptied. This unpleasant but essential task fell to professionals known as gong farmers. They worked only at night, collecting the waste and transporting it out of the city to be used as fertilizer. It was a difficult and noxious job, but a vital one that was recognized and regulated by the town authorities. In larger cities, like London, special commissions were sometimes created to oversee the sanitation of the city and the health of its waterways. These committees had the authority to enforce cleanliness, to fine those who polluted the River Thames, and to ensure that the city's defenses against miasma remained strong. This created a sense of orderly civic management. There was also a clear understanding that certain trades were more dangerous to public health than others. Butchers, with their animal waste, and tanners, who used foul-smelling chemicals, were often restricted to specific areas of the city. Ideally, these districts were located downwind or downstream from the main residential areas, a logical form of medieval zoning designed to keep their noxious byproducts away from the general populace. You can imagine the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, a sound deliberately kept separate from the quiet of the homes. To keep the main thoroughfares clean, many towns hired specialized officials, sometimes known by the simple and descriptive title of rakers. Their job was to sweep the main streets clean of refuse, animal droppings, and any other filth that might accumulate. Picture the sound of a coarse broom sweeping across the cobblestones in the quiet of the early morning, a gentle, rhythmic sound of order being restored before the city fully wakes. The clean, earthy smell of a freshly washed street after a light rain was the scent of a city breathing a sigh of relief. Of course, clean air was only half the battle. Access to fresh water was just as vital. Public wells were maintained by the town, providing a source of clean drinking water for all. Some cities even boasted complex systems of conduits, pipes made of lead or hollowed-out logs, that would bring fresh spring water from the surrounding hills into the town square. There, it would flow from a carved stone fountain, a symbol of civic pride and a life-giving resource for everyone. The feeling of that cool, fresh water from the public fountain on a warm day was a simple, profound pleasure, a taste of the purity the town strove to maintain. This sense of shared responsibility often extended right down to the individual household, with residents frequently being required by law to pave and keep clean the section of street directly in front of their own property. While these systems were far from perfect, they paint a picture of a society that was anything but oblivious to the link between filth and health. It was a world of thoughtful, logical, and sustained effort. These everyday efforts were the first line of defense. But when the ultimate miasma arrived, the great and terrible pestilence known as the plague, medieval society had to rely on another, more personal and more fragrant form of protection. It was a defense built not of stone, but of spice and perfume. When the specter of the plague haunted the land, the fight against miasma became an intensely personal and desperate battle. If bad air was the enemy, then good air was the shield. And so, people sought to surround themselves with a protective fortress of powerful. This led to the widespread use of one of the most iconic objects of the era, the pomander. A pomander was a small ball of aromatic substances, a potent mixture of all the most fragrant ingredients a person could afford. It was often held within an ornate, perforated case made of silver or gold, designed to be hung from a belt or held in the hand. To lift this small, beautiful object to your nose and inhale its rich scent was to feel a sense of security, to actively fight back against the invisible pestilence. The recipes for these pomanders were complex, featuring exotic and costly ingredients like ambergris, a waxy substance from whales, and musk from the glands of the musk deer. More common ingredients included warm, spicy cloves and nutmeg, and the sharp, clean scent of rosemary. Sometimes, a simple orange, studded all over with cloves, could serve as a personal pomander. Its spicy, warm scent, a small comfort in a time of great fear. This same principle was behind the famous and often terrifying costume of the plague doctor. The long beak of the mask was stuffed with a potent blend of aromatic herbs, flowers, and spices. As the doctor breathed, the air was filtered through this fragrant mixture, supposedly purifying it before it entered his lungs. You can imagine the overwhelming floral and herbal scent that must have surrounded these men, their own personal bubble of protective air, as they moved through the sickened city. On a grander public scale, this belief led to massive efforts to fumigate entire towns. During an outbreak, great bonfires would be lit in the streets and town squares. But these were not ordinary fires. They burned aromatic woods like pine and juniper, chosen for the thick, fragrant smoke they produced. The sight of this pungent smoke drifting slowly down a street, clinging to the buildings, and filling the air was the sight of a community fighting back. Inside homes and churches, incense was burned almost constantly, its sweet, resinous smoke, a quiet prayer for protection. The gentle crackle of the burning embers, a soothing sound in a silent, fearful room. For individuals moving through the world, smaller, more portable solutions were common. People were advised to carry and frequently sniff bouquets of flowers or bunches of potent herbs, a little bundle known as a nosegay. This was a personal, mobile air filter, a way to ensure that every breath you took in public was a clean and fragrant one. The underlying logic was beautifully simple. If two smells met, the stronger one would win. A powerful, pleasant, and wholesome scent could conquer a foul, disease-ridden one. This logic of containment also led to one of the most effective public health measures ever devised: quarantine. The practice, which gets its name from the Italian word for 40 days, involved isolating incoming ships and travelers for a set period to see if any disease would develop among them. In the context of miasma theory, they were not containing germs that these travelers and their goods might be carrying with them from an infected land, and in their homes, people would seal themselves away, keeping windows and doors shut tight especially those that faced potential sources of miasma, like a swamp or a graveyard. This desperate search for protective fragrances fueled a flourishing and incredibly lucrative global trade. The demand for spices from the East, for resins from Arabia, and for perfumes from across the known world was driven not just by a desire for luxury, but by the deeply held belief that these fragrant substances were essential medicines, powerful weapons in the unending war against disease. The knowledge of these protective herbs and the most advanced sanitation systems were often preserved and perfected in the quietest and most orderly corners of the medieval world, the monasteries. As our journey through this fragrant past nears its end, we arrive at a place of serene order and quiet contemplation. We step into a monastery, often a true sanctuary of hygienic living, a place where the pursuit of cleanliness was woven into the very fabric of spiritual life. Here, far from the chaos of the world, we find some of the most advanced and thoughtful approaches to health and sanitation of the entire medieval period. The importance of cleanliness was often written into the very rules that governed monastic life. The Rule of Saint Benedict, a guiding text for many orders, prescribed regular bathing for the monks as a matter of course. This was not an indulgence, but a part of the disciplined and holy life they sought to lead. To support this, monasteries were almost always built with great care near a source of fresh running water, like a river or a strong spring. This was the lifeblood of the community, and they became masters of harnessing it. Aqueducts and channels to bring this fresh water to all the essential parts of the monastery. It flowed into the kitchens for cooking, into the infirmary for caring for the sick, and, most importantly, to the communal washing area known as the lavabo or lavatorium. This was typically a long stone trough, often beautifully carved, with a series of spouts from which a constant stream of clean water trickled. Here, the monks would wash their hands and faces before and after meals, the gentle, constant sound of running water a soothing backdrop to their daily rituals. Their infirmaries were models of compassionate care, often equipped with their own separate kitchens and latrine facilities, to ensure the sick could be tended to without risk to the rest of the community. Here, in the quiet, sun-dappled rooms, the sick would be cared for, their beds neatly kept, the air kept as fresh as possible. The monastery's knowledge of medicine was nurtured in its gardens. This was the herbal garden, a living library of medicinal plants used to create the remedies and hygienic preparations that supported the community's health. The calming, mixed scent of beeswax from the chapel candles, old parchment from the scriptorium, and drying herbs from the garden would have filled the cool stone hallways. In the scriptorium, the monastery's library and copying room, scribes worked diligently to preserve the wisdom of the past. They painstakingly copied ancient medical texts from Greece and Rome, ensuring that the knowledge of thinkers like Galen and Hippocrates was not lost to time. They embraced the classical ideal of a healthy mind in a healthy body, integrating physical well-being into their spiritual practice. Perhaps their most impressive achievement was in the realm of sanitation. Their latrine systems were often marvels of engineering, designed with channels that could be periodically flushed with diverted river water, carrying the waste cleanly and efficiently away from the monastery. All of this, the running water, the herbal knowledge, the clean infirmaries, the flushing toilets, was driven by a profound belief. The order and cleanliness of the monastery was meant to be a physical reflection of the divine order of heaven. A clean space was a holy space. From the bustling bathhouse to the serene monastery, we've discovered a world that was far from filthy. It was a world of thought, of ritual, and of a deep and abiding desire for purity. And so, our main journey comes to a gentle close. We have traveled from the noisy, joyful community of the public bath, through the quiet luxury of a noble's private chamber, and into the very logic that shaped a society's defense against sickness. What we've found is not a world of grime, but one of ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a profound connection between the body and the soul. It was a culture of cleanliness that was complex, beautiful, and deeply human. I hope this story has brought you a little closer to the true scent and feel of the past. As you continue to unwind, I wonder, what was the most surprising thing you learned tonight? Feel free to share in the comments if you feel like it. For now, just relax and let the quiet of the past surround you. As our story now comes to its final, quiet chapter, we will not speak of great events or grand theories. Instead, we will linger here in this peaceful epilogue and explore the small and gentle details, the very substance of the world we have visited. Our pace will slow to a quiet meditation as we look closely at the tools and the recipes that formed the foundation of medieval hygiene. Let us imagine we are reading from a gentle, old manuscript, its pages filled not with battles, but with the quiet craft of daily life. Let your mind wander through these fine details, these textures and scents, as you drift deeper and deeper into rest. Our final exploration begins with the humble and transformative art of the soapmaker. Imagine a quiet courtyard, perhaps behind a bustling town workshop, or in the yard of a countryside home. In the center, over a low, carefully tended fire, rests a large iron cauldron. This is where the slow, patient alchemy of soap-making begins. The process starts not with flowers or perfumes, but with the most basic of materials, fat and ash. The primary fat used for common soap was tallow, a hard, waxy substance rendered from the suet of beef or mutton. The process of rendering it was the first step, a slow melting and clarifying that produced a clean, white fat, leaving behind any impurities. The air would be thick with its pungent, meaty smell, a foundational scent of this practical craft. The second crucial ingredient was the alkali, a substance known as lye. In a world without chemical factories, lye was produced through a patient, natural process called lixiviation. Hardwood ash, saved from the household hearth, was collected in a barrel that had a small hole near the bottom. Water was then poured slowly, methodically, over the ash. As it trickled through, it would absorb the caustic salts from the ash, emerging from the bottom as a powerful, slippery liquid. This was lye water. It was a substance to be respected, caustic and strong, and the soapmaker would test its strength by seeing if an egg or a potato would float in it. With the two main ingredients prepared, the true transformation could begin. The rendered tallow was placed in the great cauldron, where it would melt into a clear, shimmering liquid over the gentle heat of the fire. Then the lye water was added, poured in slowly and with great care. And now the long, patient work of stirring would commence. With a heavy wooden paddle, the soap-maker would begin to stir the thick, viscous mixture. Round and round the paddle would go, a slow and rhythmic motion that would continue for hours. The sound would be the gentle crackle of the fire and the soft, thick sloshing of the liquid in the pot. As the fat, which is a mild acid, combined with the lye, a powerful base, a magical change would begin to occur. This chemical reaction is called saponification, the very process that creates soap. At first, the mixture would be thin and greasy, but with constant stirring and gentle heat, it would slowly thicken, becoming more and more opaque. You could watch as the liquid slowly lightened in color, transforming from a murky brown into a creamy, pale tan. The sharp, pungent smell of rendering tallow and caustic lye would slowly mellow, changing into the clean, distinct scent of new soap. This simple process created a soft but effective soap, often called black soap, because of the dark impurities that the ash would sometimes leave behind. It was not a luxury item, but a household essential, used for everything from washing laundry to scrubbing floors and bodies. For a finer, more luxurious product, the process was elevated. Instead of tallow, the soap maker would use precious olive oil, imported from the warm lands of the Mediterranean. This created the famous Castile soap, a hard white bar that was gentle on the skin and highly prized by the wealthy. As the long hours of stirring came to an end, and the soap had thickened to the consistency of a thick porridge, one final gentle touch was added. This was the moment of fragrance. A handful of dried herbs, perhaps the calming scent of lavender, the sharp freshness of mint, or the woody aroma of rosemary, would be stirred into the finished batch. The heat of the soap would release their essential oils, and the calming, herbal scent would fill the air. A final grace note to a long and laborious process. Once the soap was ready, it was carefully ladled from the cauldron into shallow wooden molds. There it would be left to cool and harden over several days. Finally, the large blocks would be cut into smaller, usable bars, which would then be set aside to cure for several weeks, allowing the last traces of lye to neutralize, making the soap gentle and safe to use. Soap making was a respected craft, with its own guilds in many cities, but it was also a part of the rhythm of country life, with many households making their own supply once or twice a year, a slow, alchemical ritual that turned the waste of the butcher and the hearth into a block of pure, clean comfort. This humble bar of soap, born of fire and patience, was often used in conjunction with another set of carefully crafted and deeply personal items. These were the small, intimate tools that helped to shape and maintain a polished appearance. The treasured contents of a personal grooming kit. Let us now gently open one of these kits, perhaps a small, soft leather pouch tied with a cord, or a carved wooden box with a simple clasp. Inside, we find not crude implements, but small, personal treasures, each crafted with care and designed for a specific and intimate purpose. The most essential of these was the comb. Unlike the single-sided plastic combs of today, the medieval comb was often a more complex tool. Many were double-sided, a testament to their importance. One side would have thick, coarse teeth, perfect for detangling long hair and for combing through a thick beard. The other side would feature a row of very fine, tightly spaced teeth. This was the side used for the constant and necessary task of removing lice and their tiny eggs, a meticulous process that required patience and a well-made tool. The materials of the comb spoke of its owner's status. A simple farmer might have a comb carved from a piece of local wood, sturdy and functional. But for the wealthy, combs were objects of beauty. They were carved from the polished, creamy surface of bone, or the intricate, textured patterns of deer antler. The most luxurious of all were made from ivory, imported at great expense. The smooth, cool feel of a polished bone comb in the hand would have been a familiar daily sensation, a small, solid comfort. Alongside the comb, we find a small pair of tweezers, usually forged from bronze or iron. They were surprisingly light in the hand. Their purpose was simple and precise: to pluck any stray hairs from the eyebrows or face, maintaining a neat and tidy appearance. Close by, we might find a dedicated nail cleaner. This was a small, pointed implement, perhaps with a flattened end, designed to be carefully guided under the fingernails to remove any trapped dirt. For the nobility, these were not just tools, but jewelry. You can imagine tracing a finger over the intricate geometric patterns carved into the handle of a tiny silver nail cleaner, a piece of functional art. Perhaps the most curious item in the kit is the ear scoop, known in Latin as an arascalpium. It was a tiny, delicate spoon, often made of bronze or silver, with a small, shallow bowl. Its purpose was to delicately and carefully remove excess earwax. Like the other tools, it speaks to a deep concern with the small details of personal purity, a desire to be clean both inside and out. These precious items were kept together, protected in their pouch or box. For women of status, these tools might be attached to a decorative chain called a chatelaine, which hung from the belt or girdle. As she walked, the quiet, gentle jingle of her silver grooming tools would be a subtle announcement of her refinement and wealth. The designs of these small objects were remarkably timeless, remaining almost unchanged for centuries, a testament to their simple, perfect functionality. In this collection of personal treasures, one item was the most prized and rare of all: a mirror. In a world without modern glassmaking, a clear reflection was a profound luxury. Most mirrors were made of highly polished metal, a small disc of steel, bronze, or even solid silver, buffed to a reflective sheen. To gaze into one was not to see a perfect image, but a blurry, darkened, and often distorted version of oneself. It was a mysterious and captivating object, a small window into a shadowy version of the world. The intricate carvings and decorations that adorned all of these items, from the handle of a comb to the back of a mirror, show us just how much value was placed on these quiet, personal rituals of grooming. Just as these tools were used to keep the hair and body neat, a different set of preparations, drawn from the garden and the pantry, were used to care for one of the most visible and important signs of health and beauty: one's smile. Let us now turn our attention to the gentle, herbal recipes that were used to maintain a clean mouth and a radiant smile. In the quiet of a medieval household, the practice of oral care was a sensory experience, a ritual of textures and tastes drawn from the natural world. The primary tool, the medieval toothbrush, was a simple square of rough, clean linen cloth. This fabric, with its natural, slightly abrasive texture, was surprisingly effective. A person would wrap the cloth around their finger and perhaps dip it into a cleansing powder before rubbing it vigorously against their teeth and gums. The feeling of the simple cloth was one of providing a surprising and satisfying polish. The powders used with the cloth were made from a variety of common and effective ingredients. A foundational recipe would start with dried sage leaves, ground into a fine powder with a mortar and pestle. Sage has natural astringent properties, meaning it causes the gums to tighten, and it leaves behind a clean, herbal taste. To this, one might add an equal amount of simple salt. The fine, crystalline structure of salt made it an excellent abrasive for scrubbing away the film of plaque that could build up on the teeth. The texture of this combined powder would be fine and slightly gritty, a potent and effective cleanser. For those who desired a brighter, whiter smile, another ingredient was added to the mixture: powdered charcoal. This was not the charcoal from a common fire, but was specially made, often by burning rosemary wood or other fragrant plants, until they were completely carbonized. The resulting black, dusty powder, when rubbed on the teeth, acted as a powerful polisher and stain remover. You can imagine a small ceramic bowl holding this dark, dusty substance, a surprising tool in the pursuit of a brilliant smile. To make these powders more pleasant and to sweeten the breath, other ingredients were included. Crushed, dried mint leaves would add a familiar coolness, while the powdered root of the iris flower would impart a delicate, violet-like fragrance. Beyond the daily scrubbing, medieval people were very concerned with freshening their breath. The simplest method was to chew on fresh herbs, a sprig of parsley, a few fennel seeds, or, for a stronger effect, a single potent clove would be chewed slowly after a meal. The sharp, spicy scent of a crushed clove would have been a powerful and immediate remedy for any unwanted odors. For a more thorough cleansing, people would use mouthwashes. These were not chemically formulated liquids, but simple herbal infusions. A popular base was wine, which was gently heated with a mixture of spices and herbs. A handful of mint leaves, a stick of cinnamon, and a few cloves might be steeped in red wine to create a fragrant and antiseptic rinse. The cool, refreshing taste of a mint-infused wine mouthwash would have been a pleasant and sophisticated way to end a meal. Vinegar was also used as a base for these rinses, its sharp acidity valued for the clean, tingling feeling it left behind. To deal with food trapped between the teeth, toothpicks were commonly used. These were not disposable splinters of wood, but could be finely crafted implements made of bone, goose, quills, or even precious metals like silver or gold for the very wealthy. They were another small part of the grooming kit, a tool for maintaining comfort and cleanliness. All of these gentle and effective recipes were not just folk wisdom. They were carefully recorded in medical texts and in the books of household management that instructed a lady on how to run her estate, sitting right alongside recipes for dinner and remedies for a cough. They show us a world that took a thoughtful, herbal, and surprisingly effective approach to the art of a healthy smile. The final touch for any person of standing, the last step in their daily ritual of cleanliness and presentation, was the scent they wore. This was more than just a perfume. It was a personal cloud of fragrance, an aromatic shield to protect them from the unpleasantness and the dangers of the world. And the most personal and iconic of these fragrant shields was the pomander. Let us imagine, in a final, meditative moment, the quiet craft of making a simple pomander. The process would begin with an orange. In Northern Europe, an orange was a rare and expensive luxury, a fragrant globe of sunshine imported from the warm south. Its bright color and potent citrus scent already made it a precious object. The first step would be to take a whole, unpeeled orange and a small bowl of whole cloves. Then, one by one, you would push the sharp end of a clove through the thick skin of the orange. You can imagine the satisfying, slight resistance as the clove pierces the peel, and the immediate, pungent burst of fragrance that is released, the sharp, sweet oil of the orange mingling with the warm, spicy scent of the clove. This process would be repeated, slowly and patiently, until the entire surface of the orange was studded with cloves, creating a beautiful, textured pattern. This was more than just decoration. The essential oil in the cloves is a powerful, natural preservative. As the pomander was left to age in a cool, dry place, the cloves would draw the moisture from the orange, causing it to slowly shrink, dry, and harden, instead of simply rotting away. The result was a small, hard, lightweight ball that would retain its beautiful, spicy scent for years. While this simple pomander was a treasure in itself, the wealthy sought more complex and powerful fragrances. These were created through a process that resembled alchemy. The pomander maker would start with a base, a substance that could hold and slowly release a scent. The most prized of these were animal products: ambergris, a waxy, sweet-smelling substance from the stomach of a whale; musk, a potent, earthy scent from the glands of the musk deer; or civet, another powerful animal secretion. These potent bases were then mixed with the fine aromatic dust of ground spices, like rich cinnamon and exotic nutmeg, and with sticky, sweet-smelling resins like storax. This fragrant paste was then carefully rolled between the palms into a perfect, solid ball. This perfume ball was the heart of the pomander. It was then placed inside its case, a small spherical container of silver or gold, intricately perforated with beautiful patterns to allow the scent to escape. The cool, smooth feel of this silver case in the palm of your hand, its faint, complex scent always present, was a constant reminder of status and a personal shield against the world. These pomanders were not only brought out during times of plague, they were an everyday accessory, a piece of fragrant jewelry. But scent was not only worn in solid form. The art of distillation, which had been perfected in the Arab world, had made its way to Europe, allowing for the creation of potent liquid perfumes. The most beloved of these were distilled flower waters. Rosewater, with its timeless, romantic scent, and the bright, fresh fragrance of orange blossom water, were used as personal perfumes. A light, floral mist of rosewater might be sprayed onto clean hair or clothing, a final, delicate touch before facing the day. And the clean linens, which were the foundation of all hygiene, were kept sweet-smelling by being stored with small cloth bags filled with dried lavender, chamomile, or lemon verbena, their gentle scents infusing the very fibers of the fabric. In these quiet crafts, the slow stir of soap, the polish of a bone comb, the press of a clove into fruit, we find the true heart of medieval hygiene. It was a world of intention, of turning the simple gifts of nature into tools for comfort and purity. These small rituals were a way of creating a calm and orderly space in a sometimes chaotic world. I hope these gentle details have helped soothe your mind. There is no need to hold on to them now. Just let them drift as we take one final sensory stroll through the medieval world. And now, with our story told, there is nothing left but to wander. Let us take one last, gentle journey together, not through facts and events, but through the simple, sensory moments of a single day. This is a quiet epilogue, a stroll through time with no destination, designed only to provide a peaceful space for your mind to rest. The pace is slow now, the sentences long and flowing. There is nothing to learn, only to experience. Let the ambient sounds and the imagined scents of this long-ago world provide a calm and gentle current to carry you softly toward sleep. Our stroll begins in the cool, quiet air of dawn, beside the town well. The first light of morning is just beginning to touch the sky, a pale, soft gray that slowly illuminates the edges of the timber-framed houses. The air is cool and still, carrying a clean, damp scent of morning dew on cobblestones. We are standing in the heart of the town square, a wide, open space that is, for now, almost entirely silent. In the center of the square stands the well, a solid, circular structure of dark, worn stone. A simple wooden roof, Its shingles, slick with moisture, covers the opening, protecting the precious water below. This small well house is a gift to the town, perhaps funded by a wealthy merchant, as an act of civic pride, a way to ensure his community would always have the clean water that was the foundation of all life. The only sound at first is the distant crow of a rooster. But then another sound begins, the soft shuffling of footsteps. A lone figure, a woman with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, makes her way across the stones, carrying 2 empty wooden buckets. She is the first of many, as the well is a profoundly social place, a hub where the community, and especially its women, will gather to perform the first and most essential chore of the day. Without this water, there can be no morning ale to brew, no porridge to cook, no floors to scrub. She reaches the well and sets down her buckets with a soft thud. She takes hold of the thick, worn handle of the winch, a crucial piece of daily technology that allows her to draw water from the incredible depths below. The stone-lined shaft of this well plunges deep into the earth, perhaps over 100 feet down, a testament to the labor and skill required to secure a reliable source of water. A source so vital that its location was often ceremonially blessed when it was first dug. And then the day's first true sound begins. It is the rhythmic, sleepy creak of the wooden winch, a slow, gentle protest of wood against wood. The rope unwinds coil by gentle coil, and the creaking sound seems to measure out the passing of these quiet moments. Down and down the bucket goes, into the deep, cool earth. For a long moment, there is only the sound of the winch, and then it stops. A profound silence hangs in the air, a moment of anticipation, and then you hear it, a faint and distant splash, a deep, resonant echo from far below as the bucket finally hits the cold, still water. The creaking begins again, a little more strained this time, as she begins the long task of raising the now heavy bucket. The sound is slow and steady, a rhythm of effort and reward. Soon, another sound joins it, a heavy, dripping music, as the full bucket emerges from the darkness of the well mouth, its sides overflowing with clear, cold water. The drops patter onto the cobblestones that surround the well, a dark, wet circle that speaks of countless mornings just like this one. She swings the bucket over to the stone ledge and deftly tips its contents into her own waiting pails. The clean, sharp, mineral scent of the fresh water rises into the cool air, a smell of pure, life-giving refreshment. It is the smell of the day beginning. As the sun rises higher, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange, the quiet, solitary sounds of the well begin to give way to the gentle growing hum of the marketplace and the fragrant allure of its many treasures. We now drift away from the well, allowing the sounds of splashing water and creaking wood to fade behind us. Our path takes us into the town's marketplace, which is now beginning to stir with a quiet energy. We move past the stalls selling cheese and bread, past the noisy pens of chickens, and find our way to a more peaceful corner of the square. Here, under a simple canvas awning, is the stall of the herbalist, and the air itself seems to change, becoming thick with a dry, clean, and profoundly calming collection of scents. This is the town's pharmacy, a place of healing and comfort, run by a woman or man whose knowledge has been passed down through generations, or perhaps learned within the quiet walls of a monastery infirmary. The stall itself is a beautiful tapestry of textures and subtle colors. Countless canvas bags, their tops rolled down, sit alongside open wooden bins, and each one is filled with the dried treasures of the field and forest. There are mounds of silvery green leaves, piles of gnarled roots, and jars filled with delicate paper-thin flower petals. The dominant scent, the one that greets you from yards away, is the deep and soothing aroma of dried lavender. It is sold in great, fragrant bundles, destined to be scattered on the floors of homes as a strewing herb, releasing its calming perfume with every footstep, a simple, natural way to sweeten the air and deter pests. Woven in with the lavender is the gentle, apple-like fragrance of chamomile, its small, daisy-like flowers promising a peaceful cup of tea to soothe the nerves and invite sleep. Leaning closer, you can distinguish the sharper, cleaner notes that cut through the soft, floral haze. There is the strong, pine-like scent of rosemary, an herb of remembrance, tucked into the clothes of a bride for luck, or placed in the hands of the departed as a final farewell. Beside it, a bin of dried mint offers a cooler, more invigorating fragrance, a promise of refreshment. And here is a large sack of dried sage leaves, their powerful, savory scent a reminder of their importance in the kitchen, but also in the dental powders used to keep the gums healthy and the teeth clean. An old woman approaches the stall, her face etched with worry. She speaks in a low voice to the herbalist, who listens patiently before turning to his collection. With a wooden scoop, he measures out a careful portion of one herb, then another, his movements precise and economical. He pours the mixture onto a small brass scale, and you hear the gentle, metallic clink as he adjusts the weights, using the ancient apothecary's system of scruples and drams to ensure the dose is just right. He is not merely selling plants. He is dispensing ancient wisdom, a belief that the appearance of a plant can hint at its purpose, that the spotted leaves of the lungwort are a sign from God that it can heal ailments of the lungs. The herbalist scoops the final mixture into a small cone of rolled paper, and you hear the soft, dry rustle of the leaves and stems as they settle. The woman pays her small coin, takes her remedy, and her face seems a little less burdened. She is carrying not just a bundle of dried plants, but a small measure of hope. The air here is a testament to a world deeply connected to the earth, a world where the answer to an ailment, a tool for cleanliness, or a comfort for the soul could be found in the leaves, roots, and flowers of the common field. From the aromatic peace of the market, we follow a quiet, well-trodden path that leads away from the bustling center of town. The sounds of commerce fade, replaced by a more gentle and rhythmic sound, a sound that draws us down the gentle slope toward the slow-moving river. Here, on the wide, grassy banks, under the warm morning sun, is the domain of the town's laundresses. This is an exclusively female world, a place of hard, communal labor that follows a timeless and soothing rhythm. The air here smells clean, with the slightly sharp, almost sterile scent of lye soap carried on the gentle breeze, mingling with the damp, earthy smell of the river itself. The dominant sound is the gentle, constant lapping of the river as it flows over smooth, water-worn stones, a peaceful and unchanging bass note to the music of the work. Dotted along the bank, several women are deep in their task. They are surrounded by great piles of linen, the shirts and shifts and sheets of the town's more prosperous households. One woman stands over a large wooden tub, a buck, using a long pole to stir the linens, steeping in a hot, cloudy solution of lye, the powerful cleaning agent derived from simple wood ash. This process, known as bucking, is the secret to achieving the brilliant whiteness that is the ultimate mark of cleanliness. The lye is caustic and must be handled with care, but its power to dissolve grease and grime is unmatched. For the most stubborn stains, a laundress might even use stale urine, its ammonia acting as a surprisingly effective, if pungent, bleaching agent. Further down the bank, another woman kneels on a flat, low rock at the river's edge. She pulls a heavy, sopping wet sheet from the water and begins to beat it against the stone. The sound is a rhythmic, dull thud, a steady and hypnotic beat that echoes softly across the water. Thud, thud, thud. It is the sound of purification, the physical act of forcing the dirt from the fibers, of working the lye deep into the cloth, and of wringing the heavy water from the fabric. It is a sound of immense effort, yet within this peaceful, natural setting, it feels less like a struggle and more like a dance, a timeless ritual of cleansing. All around, the fruit of this labor is on display. Spread out across the grassy bank, on what is known as a bleaching green, are dozens of brilliant white sheets and shirts. They lie in stark, beautiful contrast to the deep green of the grass, drinking in the power of the sun, which acts as the final, crucial tool, a natural and free bleaching agent that turns the linen a dazzling, almost luminous white. The women work together, their quiet conversation and occasional bursts of laughter drifting on the air. This riverbank is their workshop, but it is also their social space, a place to exchange news and share stories as they scrub and beat and wring. It is physically demanding, low-status work, but here, by the gentle flowing water, there is a sense of peace and purpose. The rhythmic thud of the laundry, the murmur of voices, and the constant, soothing whisper of the river all combine to create a soundscape of profound and simple tranquility. As the afternoon sun begins its long, slow descent, casting a warm, golden light across the landscape, we wander back from the river. We move through the now quieter streets of the town, seeking a final sanctuary of peace, a place where the day's work is done and a deep, meditative silence is allowed to settle. Our path leads us to a high stone wall, and through a simple wooden gate, we step into the profound and enveloping peace of a monastery garden at twilight. The moment we cross the threshold, the world changes. The remaining sounds of the town are completely silenced by the high protective walls, leaving only a deep and resonant quiet. We are standing in a cloister garth, a perfectly square garden that was designed to be a small, earthly paradise, a place for quiet walking and contemplation. The air here is still and cool, and it carries the damp, clean smell of stone and rich earth as the evening dew begins to form on the leaves of the plants. The garden is a model of divine order. The paths are laid out in the shape of a cross, dividing the space into 4 neat quadrants. In the very center, where the paths meet, a small, simple fountain bubbles softly. Its gentle, burbling sound is the only sound in the garden, a symbol of the 4 rivers of paradise, a constant living presence in this holy space. The monks who tend this garden are some of the most skilled horticulturalists of the age, and this small, sheltered space, with its unique microclimate, is a living library of their knowledge. One quadrant is the kitchen garden, with its neat rows of vegetables and culinary herbs. Another is the infirmary garden, the domain of the monk known as the infirmerer, who is responsible for the health of his brethren. Here grow the potent medicinal plants, their properties carefully recorded in the monastery's library. And all around are the flowers, chosen not only for their beauty, but for their deep spiritual symbolism. The pure white lilies and the deep red roses are a living tribute to the Virgin Mary. As the light fades, the scents of the garden begin to deepen and change. The heady, sweet perfume of night-blooming flowers begins to unfurl, mingling with the calming, savory aromas of the herb beds. You can distinguish the clean scent of sage, the sharp notes of thyme, and the gentle fragrance of chamomile, all settling in for the night. A few honeybees, residents of the hives kept in a quiet corner of the orchard, make their last lazy flights of the day, their buzzing a faint, drowsy hum. Their work provides the honey for the kitchen and the pure beeswax for the thousands of candles that will illuminate the chapel through the night. The profound, enveloping silence seems to deepen with the darkness. The burbling of the fountain becomes more distinct, and then, from the cool, damp earth at the base of the stone walls, the first faint chirping of a cricket begins, a hesitant start to the nightly chorus. It is the sound of the world finally letting go, of the day's labor ending, and the deep, restorative peace of the night beginning. Here, in the quiet of the garden, protected and serene, our own story comes to a gentle and final rest, and so our stroll through time comes to a gentle rest. The sounds of the medieval world have faded, leaving only the peace and quiet of this present moment. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the lost world of medieval hygiene. I hope it has been a relaxing and insightful voyage for you. It's my greatest wish that these stories provide a calm and comfortable space for you to unwind and find deep, restful sleep. If you've enjoyed our time together, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Sleeping Scribe for more calming history. Your support means the world and helps our small community grow. For now, though, there is nothing left to do. Let go of the day. Let the story fade. Rest well and have the sweetest of dreams.